Okay, we're here to talk about the fourth episode of the seventh season of Black Mirror, Plaything, written by Charlie Brooker, directed by David Slade. In this episode, a writer and game reviewer for PC Zone magazine named Cameron is confronted by the police after shoplifting, and he's ultimately arrested because he is suspected of killing an unidentified person. While with the police, Cameron talks about his past with game designer Colin Rittman, who we met in the Bandersnatch episode, and the game Colin designed called Thronglets. Thronglets is Colin's attempt to make a digital life form. It's a game where he has coded them to grow and to evolve over time. After Cameron steals the game from Colin, his connection to the Thronglets continues to grow, gets stronger. It gets even stronger still after taking LSD, which allows him to understand their communication and begin to communicate with them. When a guest at his house named Lump kills the Thronglets, Cameron murders him, hides the body, and over the next few decades, Cameron builds up the game and his connection to the Thronglets, which leads him to surgically placing a port in his brain so he can continue to evolve that connection. During his interrogation with the police, Cameron won't say who the body is until he gets a piece of paper and a pen. When the police give him these, Cameron draws a code that the computer servers then pick up. This allows the Thronglets to take over the country's emergency broadcast system and send a noise that reprograms all human brains in an effort to, quote, eliminate conflict. Um, Ominous ending. Interesting tangent from Bandersnatch, I guess we should say. A lot of places we can start here, but there are some connections back to that previous interactive episode.
Yeah, there are. And thinking about your summary as you were reading through it definitely at least sounds like you're taking Cameron's word for it in terms of what happens in this episode. That was one of the things I wanted to talk
Yes.
about. For example, he takes LSD and then he can understand what the Thronglets are saying perfectly, and then at the end, the Thronglets are going to merge with humanity or whatever. And that's one thing I do ultimately really want to talk about is how do we interpret that ending? And I guess we can go ahead and start there since I already brought it up. Um, I don't know. What do you think? One of the things that struck me, I wrote on this episode, if people want to go find my article on tvobsessive.com on it. But one of the things that struck me as I was doing that is I realized that there's ambiguity here, and certainly there's a question of whether we should believe his account. You know what I mean? Or like, is this just a wildly delusional guy? But something happens at the end. And I found
Yes.
myself feeling like, well, it almost makes more sense to me to believe him than to spin out some alternate interpretation. So I don't know. What do you think there?
Yeah, so there's sort of the path where we have this story told from the point of view after he takes LSD, and then what would have happened if he had never done that? Would have we continued down the same path? We've gotten to the same conclusion. So certainly there is the perspective there that Cameron is an unreliable narrator, particularly after he begins the LSD use. However, I think I'm with you, where I tend to believe that this is what actually happened because, most of the things at least is either his recollection of what he has remembered from the past, okay, or his point of view from within the police station. But then I believe at the end, we break outside of that and see other people that are not in that room, they're not from his past, sort of have the rollback eyes and the whatever happens to them through the thronglet. So it seems like there might be like this is what actually is happening, not just in his head.
Yeah. So, but is it what he says is happening, right? Because
That's
there's the
right.
background
Yeah.
question of whether the Thronglets are like really a digital life form. Um, you mentioned the LSD, which he says allows him to understand and communicate with them, and then they ask for equipment
Mhm.
upgrades. So, I mean, at the very least, I believe that he did all of that. But
Yes.
are the Thronglets really alive? I mean, yeah, one other thing that I think they have to bear in mind here is he was doing this stuff for like 25 years.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Um, was he taking acid every day for 25 years? I think
How
so.
is he still functional after all that time,
Well, I mean, that's, yeah, he almost seems more sane than you would expect. But, and his claim, that's part of what's interesting too, because it does seem to track in a way. His claim is that by merging with the thronglets, he's gained this confidence and he's
Yeah.
calm and this lack of tension that he wants to share with others and so on. So I think that the if you will, deflationary reading would be that this guy is just insane, basically, and has been laboring under this delusion for 25 years that the computer program he has running is like sentient life. Um, when I guess it, maybe it isn't, but he has been doing something that he has now carried out, right? And
Yeah.
the question would be if it's not a matter at the end of that signal transmitting the thronglets to humanity's brains to eliminate conflict or whatever. If that's not the case, then what exactly did he do to everyone?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think there's a reading of this where he became, I mean, we saw whatever we can believe from what he told us about his past. He became a drugged out, murdering, just sort of a complete devotee to I do nothing but spend all day long focused on my LSD use in this game, but eventually his connection to the thronglets, as he was able to evolve that, he became, I don't know, more enlightened, more of a, another level of human or another level of evolution. So now, they're going to attempt to do that to everyone else, and he sort of rose above this, his murder and his drug use and all these things, but yeah, I just there are not just two, there are multiple paths I think you can take here to read the ending.
Yeah. And then, okay, well, then that's part of where I think we can think about the connections to Bandersnatch, right? You see Colin. I love that character a lot. Like one of
Hmm.
my favorite characters in all of Black Mirror. So I was happy about that. We also see his boss, Mohan. So clearly, if we're thinking about Bandersnatch and that question of whether this canonicalizes an ending of Bandersnatch, it would have to be one where those two don't die, right? Because there are paths in Bandersnatch where one or both of them die. There are also paths in Bandersnatch where
Yeah.
Tuckersoft goes out of business. So the video game company Tuckersoft still exists.
Yes.
Um, we're told that Colin had some, level of breakdown or whatever. He leaves the room to take his meds. But then we're told later in the episode he has another breakdown and he erased the
Yeah.
game so that the copy that Cameron has is the only copy that exists, I guess, and that's significant. Anyway, I mean, one of the things they played within Bandersnatch through Colin was the idea of multiple realities and many
Right.
worlds theory kind of thing and so on. So I don't know. We could just read it along those lines, right? It doesn't necessarily have to be. I don't think that it is definitively making a certain ending of Bandersnatch canon. So it's an open question how we think about that kind of parallel world question, I suppose.
Yeah, and I also think to your point, there is, I think, many worlds of an ending of this particular episode, but there's also the path of, yeah, I don't actually know, is this a reliable telling of the story based on what Cameron did for so many years, or if this did not happen, there was another path that he could have taken. So without it being interactive, it certainly is a very mentally interactive exercise, right? To think about what are the different opportunities here.
Yeah, for sure. And all the stuff with Lump, let's talk about that more. There's another, I mean, it's almost more of an illusion to Bandersnatch when he kills Lump because he hits him with the ashtray, which I
Yeah.
don't know if you recall in Bandersnatch, that was a kill shot move with uh, Stefan's father. Um, at least
Yes.
that was one possibility, right? Where when you chose kill dad, it was you hit him with the ashtray and he just died. So that's in there, and I thought that was noteworthy. But then here, Lum doesn't directly die, and then he strangles him on the floor. Then he chops up his body, which was also one of the options in Bandersnatch, and it was actually the option that you quote unquote should choose for the game to be
Yeah.
successful. Um, for whatever that's worth. But I was also thinking, I mean, I don't know how to put this question exactly. There was, I'll just put it in like the bluntest way and not worry about sounding like a monster. There was at least some part of me in watching that scene that felt like Lump had it coming. What do you think?
Well, I think that the show does that. It connects you. You have this long-term connection to Colin. So in a way, the sense of like this is the game that he birthed, right? You then did all this connection with Cameron, and then you're sort of rooting for, in some weird way, for Cameron to succeed and build this thing and help these thronglets grow and evolve. And then someone comes in and starts taking their life away. And yeah, you think, okay, well, this is not, this is, I'm now more empathetic with the game designers and the thronglets in the game than I certainly am with Lump. So yeah, let's get under the, that Bandersnatch uniform or universe and start chopping them up. Yeah, I
Yeah.
have no problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, I guess in part because it was sucking me into the premise that the Thronglets really were alive and all of that, which from
Yeah,
a more
exactly.
detached point of view, I still have to think that's questionable, but it's interesting to play with the idea of what if they really are, right? Because Colin says he programmed them to evolve, and I don't know, man, if we're talking about
Yes.
Cameron's running that program constantly, you know, and upgrading the hardware. And so I don't know, there's an interesting idea to play with there. But regardless of all of that, part of me still thinks, this guy came into his bedroom, invades his privacy by, opening the door to go into his bedroom, takes the blanket off of his computer monitor and starts messing with it. It's almost like that invasion of privacy and so on. I don't want to go so far as to say I think that
Yeah.
justifies murder, but like it kind of felt like I was on board with it enough within the context of the episode to feel like, at the very least, that Lump did something really, really wrong here. And the voiceover with Peter Capaldi, who's great in this, talking in that moment about the kind of brutality of humanity and how it, I mean, I don't know what all I want to say about this, but I did think it was interesting to think about how much the fact that Lump's first impulse was to start killing the
Mhm.
Thronglets felt completely plausible.
See, I think it was something that made sense to me to look at Lump as someone who came into a situation they didn't understand, didn't have the background, didn't have the time spent or the emotional energies put into this game. And so it made sense that he goes in there looking to, okay, well, it makes sense. You find a game. What's the thing I need to accomplish in this game? And he just starts killing them. It goes back to what Colin was saying about what he feels is often the purpose of video games, which is to create conflict. And he was trying to do the opposite of that. And so Lump, just being the representation of someone that's going into something new and just trying to kill or eliminate whatever the obstacle is, it almost makes sense that that's what he would do.
Yeah. And that was interesting. Again, I love Colin, but some of his lines of it, it's not a game, or
Yeah.
why do you need a goal? Of course, I mean, it does seem to kind of have a goal to help the Thronglets thrive or whatever, and it's interesting how they set this in the mid 1990s. And one thing I was looking into when I was writing on it was the Tamagotchi,
Mm.
which they made this set like a year before Tamagotchi came out, I guess. Um, whatever that's worth, they don't mention it, but it's something I thought about because I remember being in high school and um, lots of my female friends in particular carrying around little Tamagotchis all the time.
Yes.
Um,
Yes.
so it is like it's weird because there kind of are games like this at this point, right? So is it a game? Does the game require conflict? Is there a goal? You know, Um, to what extent is it Cameron creating a certain goal? I don't know. It's all interesting, and I guess that central question is like are they actually alive? Is he actually communicating with them? Did he actually merge with them? I mean, the guy put a port in the back of his head. He's done something, right? So
Yeah.
like what has he done and what did he do at the very end? But I do like how the
Yeah.
episode leaves that as a question at the end.
Yeah, I did wonder, particularly as we talk about the LSD use, this idea of doing surgery on yourself so that you can connect your brain into your computer. Was that of just a product of something that he felt because of the drugs, and he's actually communicating with them, or oh, my drugged out state is telling me to do this, and so that's why I ended up drilling a hole in the back of my head and plugging in to my computer.
I mean, like I don't think that would work.
No.
So yeah, I mean, really, we should be maybe a little bit more hesitant to just accept his version of events, because I don't think, even though at some conceptual level it does make sense to say something like, oh, well, the brain is a computer and all of that kind of thing. I don't think that you could, create that kind of port in the back of your head and, plug
Right.
your computer into it and it would do anything at all, right? Um,
Well, I mean, we now have Plaything and the Matrix. So if those two things say it can be done, then I assume it can be done, right?
oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's similar to that, but I mean, I do think, and with the LSD in there, it's really is playing on that line, and it probably, if we want to be, if we want to think about what's plausible or realistic, it probably is along the lines of this guy took a bunch of acid and suffered
Yeah.
under delusions, and yes, he made the sport in the back of his head. Um, but no, the thronglets are just computer programming. Maybe got more and more sophisticated. Um, but then somehow he does, through this noise, knock people out and their eyes like roll back into their heads and something happens there. That's it.
Yeah.
But
That's the
that's
thing. That I mean, that's the strongest evidence for he actually did something to at least the group of people that can hear this emergency broadcast system. And yeah, what has he done? That's that. I mean, I kind of enjoy the fact that we don't exactly know. All we get is a bloody smile of his, offering to help somebody up and say, "Let's get going."
yes. Yes, I'm glad you said that because I agree. I don't want to know, to be clear. Um, he does say that this is going to be global, right?
Hmm.
So if you believe him, then this has been transmitted to every device globally, not just in that, small area. But I mean, what I'm saying is I don't want like a follow-up to this episode that tells us.
Yeah.
I absolutely don't. So if you're listening, Charlie Brooker,
Yeah.
don't do that.
Which is why I thought it was interesting to see. I just made a quick reference of this, but over the course of that time, to show the passage of time, you see him buying, game systems and iPhones and virtual reality headsets, and just all the latest, newest things that are now all just so interconnected to one another. So yeah, I mean, the idea that he could hold up a QR code and impact the the globe by penetrating a computer system, yeah, I mean, it certainly makes sense to us now.
Yeah. And you mentioned there's a QR code in the middle of the credits of the episode, and I followed it, but I don't think you even need the QR code to find the game. There is a game, a phone
Yes.
thronglets game that they put out as a tie-in to this. Um, I still haven't made any time to mess with it, really. It's not exactly my thing to like play games on my phone, I guess. Um, but that's out there. I don't know if others have. I saw some reviews and things like that, or whatever you want to call them. I don't know that there's anything super meaningful about it, other than it's just like a tie-in game kind of thing that they
Yeah.
made.
Yeah, I made it as far as the App Store, but I don't know, call me a Luddite or paranoid or whatever, but I did not I did not download the game onto my phone just in case, just in case.
I downloaded the game onto my phone, and then in order to play it, you have to log into Netflix.
Oh, okay.
And I was struggling to remember my Netflix login because I don't normally use Netflix on my phone.
Yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so that was my stumbling block and has remained so. Like, I mean, like, of course I could figure out my Netflix login,
yeah,
um, but my computer remembers it. Like my web browser just remembers it. So,
yeah,
and I
right.
mean, it was even like, which email address did I use? That was the thing. It's not just a password. It's like, which email address did I use for this?
Yeah,
So
right.
anyway, not here nor there. Anything else you want to say about Plaything?
No, I found this very, very interesting, very entertaining, as we've talked about on some of these episodes before. It's the ones with that have these ambiguous endings are often the best, and I put this in that category.
Yeah, I enjoyed this episode a lot. I mean, it's also tight. I mean, I think it's maybe the shortest
Hmm.
episode of the season, which I
Yeah.
appreciate. It didn't need to be any longer. I like the structure of it, which we didn't talk about a whole lot, but I think Peter Capaldi is great as for this kind of structure, right? Because Peter Capaldi is really good as the storyteller in the interrogation room,
Yes.
and then doing the voiceover as we see the flashbacks and all of that. So yeah, I enjoyed this one a lot. We've got two more to wrap up season 7. So next week we're going to talk about Eulogy, which you wrote on for the site. If you want to go and read that, starring Paul Giamatti. That was a good episode. So I'm looking forward to talking about that with you next week. In the meantime, thanks as always for listening. Hopefully you enjoyed the podcast. If so, please do leave us a good rating, review, all of that good stuff. If you're on YouTube, hit that thumbs up, subscribe to our YouTube channel. It's really appreciated. And check out tvobsessive.com. There are articles on every episode of Black Mirror there, if that's what you're looking for, as well as on all sorts of other TV shows. You can follow the site on social media, search for TV Obsessive, and we'll be back next week.
Yeah, looking forward to it. See you next week for Eulogy.